People have always used drugs, and they're going to carry on doing it. But the current drug laws in most countries only add to the harms that drugs can do in terms of health, human rights, and increased violence in communities. So we need to find a better way. Through history and across different cultures, people have used drugs as a way to escape from reality, to get out of physical or emotional pain, for fun, for rituals, or just to get through everyday life. The cultural context, how drugs are used, as well as things about the drug users themselves, their age, experience, state of health, play a large part in what harm, if any, illegal drugs can cause, though some drugs are inherently more risky than others. The best view of current drug policy is that it's there to alleviate the harms that some illegal drugs can cause. And it does so by drawing a boundary which minimises the risks of prescription and legal drugs and emphasises the danger and immorality, and therefore also the thrill, of drugs with a capital D. The next slide you'll see is a graph based on the work of the Advisory Council for the Misuse of Drugs in Britain. They thought it was important to assess the harms of legal and illegal drugs together, and you can see alcohol's quite high up the scale. It's far above cannabis, and ecstasy, which is currently Class A in Britain, is well down the list of harms. Prohibition also leads to drugs being supplied in more concentrated forms, because then they're easier to hide and to smuggle. In 20s America, bathtub gin replaced far weaker beer as the drink of choice, and today powder cocaine replaces coca leaf on international drug markets, and violence continues. Argentina is an example of a country with a bit more enlightened drug policy. There, coca leaf is freely available to buy in greengrocers shops, but powder cocaine is still illegal. Criminalization also works against public health. In a lot of countries, injecting drug users are afraid to carry clean syringes or use needle exchanges for fear of police harassment and arrest. The death penalty is still in operation in 30 countries worldwide for drug offences. Here in Ireland, sentences aren't so severe, but getting a drugs conviction can have a major impact on what work you might get or getting a visa to countries like Australia or the USA. And it doesn't matter if you've been convicted for cannabis or for heroin, the consequences are the same. Current policy also fails on its own aims. Demand and availability stay high while prices drop. This graph shows drug prices in Europe between 2004 and 2009. And you can see all the prices stay the same or drop, with the one exception of grass. The drug wars have also led to the destabilisation of entire countries, like Mexico, Colombia and Guatemala, and increased violence in those states, like you see on the news every week, poor Mexico. In 2009, Afghanistan supplied 90% of the world's opium crop. That's half the country's GDP. I think it's increased since. That crop could supply morphine, which is still the gold standard for pain relief, or legal heroin to current users. I'm not advocating a free market free-for-all, but a regulation of the drug market, whereby drugs could be made available either on prescription, through pharmacy sales, or in off-licences or coffee shops, depending on the level of harm. More risky drugs would be harder to get, and less risky ones more easily available. Availability and quality could be monitored. Currently, most of what's sold as ecstasy only contains a percentage of MDMA and quite a lot of other impurities mixed in. Drugs could be sold in packs with information on dosage, side effects and safer use, like conventional medicines are now. And they could be sold at a fair price to cut out the dealers. Advertising and branding should be banned, although the alcohol and tobacco companies probably wouldn't like this, nor would the people who made money from selling ads like Reagan back then. Access should be limited to adults only, but some drugs are always going to leak onto the black market, and people using them should still be able to get treatment and advice without being in fear of the law. Politicians looking for election are always going to stick with the status quo. Advocating a reform of the drug laws is seen as a vote loser. Only extreme pressure from things like narco-terrorism or steady pressure from voters is going to try and convince them to change their minds towards a more rational, evidence-based drugs policy. If you agree with me, it's up to us to keep up that pressure. And I'd like to thank Transform Drugs Policy Foundation, whose work informed a lot of the how to do it part of this. Thank you.